I remember the day of the inheritance reading as clearly as if it were carved into stone. I walked into the lawyer's office expecting nothing more than a formal procedure, and perhaps a bittersweet moment of closure. My father had passed after a long life marked by sacrifice, resilience, and a type of strength most people today would not recognize. I loved him deeply, and even though we had disagreements over the years, I never doubted the affection he carried for me. I took my seat quietly at the table while my son Gabriel positioned himself confidently across from me. He was wearing a perfectly tailored suit and an expression that revealed far more than he intended. Pride, greed, expectation. It was all written plainly on his face. He had convinced himself that my father's fortune now belonged entirely to him. The lawyer entered holding a folder thick with documents. He greeted us politely, but his eyes lingered on me longer than expected, as if he anticipated a reaction. I folded my hands and waited. The air in the room felt heavy, like something unsaid hovered in the corners. Gabriel leaned back in his chair with a grin that stretched too wide. He tapped his fingers on the table, impatiently ready to receive what he believed was already his by right. He did not look at me, not even for a second. In his mind, this meeting was nothing more than a formality. He thought he knew the ending of this story. The lawyer cleared his throat and began reading. According to the will of the late Señor Augusto, the first allocation concerns his daughter. I sat straighter. Gabriel leaned forward, mildly annoyed by the delay. The lawyer continued. To my daughter I leave 10 reais. For a moment the world seemed to fall silent. 10 reais. I blinked, believing I had misheard. Gabriel did not hesitate. He burst into laughter louder than the small room could contain. He slapped the table, doubled over with amusement. 10 reais, Mom. He said it with mockery dripping from every word. That is perfect for you. You never handled money well anyway. He smirked triumphantly. This must be his way of keeping things fair. His words felt like a slap. I kept my expression neutral, refusing to let him see my hurt. For a moment my heart stung with disappointment, but beneath the pain something else glimmered. Confusion. This made no sense. My father may not have been the wealthiest man in the world, but he had built a legacy that would survive for generations. He had worked tirelessly to ensure his family would be protected. The idea that he left me only 10 reais was not only strange. It was impossible. He would never do that without reason. And I trusted him enough to believe that reason would make itself known in time. Gabriel exaggerated his laugh, leaning back in his chair as if he had just won a long battle. He showed no respect for the moment. No respect for the memory of the man who had helped raise him. No respect for me, his own mother. It was not new. I had watched him change over the years, becoming more entitled, more self-absorbed, more convinced that the world revolved around him. I blamed myself for some of it. Perhaps I had given him too much freedom, too much forgiveness, not enough discipline. But seeing him mock me in front of the lawyer felt different, felt final. Still I remained silent. My instinct told me there was something important hidden beneath this strange decision. Something my father had planned. Something Gabriel was too arrogant to see. Then the lawyer raised his hand, signaling for quiet. Señor Gabriel, there is more. Gabriel's laughter stopped abruptly. More. The single word hung in the air with weight. For the first time I saw uncertainty flicker across his face. The lawyer adjusted his glasses slowly, as if preparing to reveal a moment that would alter everything. If you are listening to my story, tell me where you are watching from. Tell me if you have ever been humiliated by someone you love. You are not alone. And my story was far from over. Gabriel leaned forward, his smile fading as he waited for the lawyer to continue. The lawyer cleared his throat again and read the next lines in a calm, steady voice. To my grandson Gabriel, I leave all remaining assets totaling 160 million reais. Gabriel exhaled with satisfaction and thumped his fist lightly on the table. I knew it. I always knew it. His voice carried the confidence of someone who believed they had already won the game. He pushed back in his chair, victorious, savoring the moment. He did not look at me, not even briefly. My feelings, my presence, none of it mattered to him. In his mind he was already celebrating the end of the meeting. I stayed quiet, observing the lawyer's expression. Something was not right. The way he held the document, the way he avoided meeting Gabriel's eyes for too long. My father had always been a man of depth, the kind of person who believed lessons should come wrapped in meaning. A simple transfer of wealth without context felt unlike him. I knew my father believed money could corrupt if placed in the wrong hands. He often said fortune reveals character, not the other way around. Gabriel never understood that. He believed money was the answer to every problem. My father knew better. The lawyer inhaled slowly and continued. However, before the inheritance can be released, there is a final clause. Gabriel's expression cracked instantly. Clause? He demanded. The lawyer did not react. He simply reached for a small recorder on his desk, pressed a button, and allowed the room to fill with a soft click followed by a familiar voice. My father's voice. Even after death, his tone carried strength. Gabriel, my boy, if you are hearing this, then you have forgotten what truly matters. His voice sounded tired but deliberate. You believe money brings power. But true power comes from character, kindness, and humility. Gabriel stiffened in his seat, looking around the room as if expecting someone to tell him this was a mistake. The recording continued. If you mocked your mother today, then you have proven you are not ready to receive what you believe is yours. Gabriel's mouth fell open. I sat very still, holding my breath. My father had known. Somehow he had predicted exactly what would happen on this day. He knew Gabriel better than Gabriel knew himself. The lawyer pressed pause, allowing the words to settle. Gabriel's face flushed with anger. Is this some kind of joke? He snapped. The lawyer shook his head. No, Señor Gabriel. It is part of the will. Gabriel clenched his fists. Then play the rest. The lawyer pressed the button. Before you receive anything, my father's voice continued, you must complete one task. You must spend 1 month serving at the foundation where I grew up. If you fail or refuse, the inheritance will go entirely to your mother. Gabriel shot out of his seat. This is ridiculous. This is manipulation. This is not legal. It was legal. Perfectly legal. Gabriel paced furiously, insisting he would challenge the will. He accused the lawyer of conspiracy and blamed me for influencing my father. The lawyer shook his head firmly. Your grandfather wrote every word himself. I saw the original documents. He wanted you to earn the right to manage this fortune. He wanted you to understand it first. Gabriel stopped pacing and stared at me with a mixture of anger and disbelief. You planned this. You knew. I looked at him and spoke softly. I knew nothing. But your grandfather knew you. And he wanted you to become the man he hoped you could be. Gabriel slumped into his chair, breathing hard. The lawyer closed the folder. The decision is yours, Señor Gabriel. Accept the condition or walk away. Gabriel shut his eyes tightly, fighting the truth that was now confronting him from every direction. Finally he spoke through gritted teeth. I will do it. But after that month the money is mine. He had no idea how wrong he was. Gabriel thought the challenge would be simple. 1 month at the foundation sounded easy enough for someone who had never lifted anything heavier than a business portfolio. He told himself he would endure the inconvenience, gather the signature required to prove completion, and return triumphantly to collect the inheritance he believed belonged to him. In his mind, this was merely a temporary humiliation, a test he would pass with minimal effort. He believed that money waited for him like a loyal servant. He believed he could play along without being changed. But my father had known better. He had designed the test precisely because he understood the cracks in Gabriel's character, and he knew that only real-life experience could reveal the truth beneath the arrogance. 2 days after the meeting, Gabriel arrived at the foundation. It was not the prestigious type of charity he imagined. It sat on a quiet street behind worn buildings with peeling paint and uneven sidewalks. Inside, volunteers and social workers tended to elderly residents abandoned by their families. My father had once lived there as a child and later returned as an adult to help rebuild it. He had always believed that the truest measure of wealth was what one gave, not what one kept. Gabriel did not understand that philosophy. Not yet. When Gabriel entered the foundation for the first time, he wore expensive sunglasses and a watch worth more than the building itself. He greeted no one. He simply announced that he was there to complete the terms of a legal requirement. The director of the foundation, an elderly woman named Dona Clarice, stared at him for a long moment. She had known my father for decades, and she recognized instantly that Gabriel was not there out of compassion. She handed him an apron, a pair of gloves, and a list of tasks. Clean the dining hall. Serve lunch. Speak with the residents. Listen to them. Help them. Learn their names. Gabriel scoffed. He thought the tasks were beneath him. But the lawyer had been clear. The foundation would report his behavior. Any sign of disrespect or refusal would void the inheritance. So he forced a smile and began working, but the smile was thin and hollow. His heart was not in it. The first few days were a disaster. Gabriel refused to touch anything dirty. He avoided conversations and stayed glued to his phone, scrolling through business news as if reminding himself of the life he believed he deserved. The residents noticed. They watched him with quiet disappointment. They saw the same pride my father had seen in him. One of the elderly men, Senor Elias, tried speaking to him, offering a gentle story about the time he met my father as a young volunteer. Gabriel brushed him off, refusing even to sit down. Yet something unexpected began to shift. On the fourth day, the dining hall became short-staffed and Gabriel was forced to serve meals to dozens of residents alone. He moved, awkwardly spilling food, fumbling with trays, trying to maintain his dignity, while elderly hands reached out with gratitude he did not understand. At one point, a frail woman touched his arm and whispered, "Thank you, my son." Her voice, weakened by age, carried sincerity that pierced his shield of arrogance. Gabriel froze. Something in her tone lingered inside him long after he walked away. By the end of the week, he was exhausted. His expensive clothes were stained. His shoes scuffed. His phone battery constantly dead from lack of time to charge. He came home each night frustrated, but something small and quiet had begun forming beneath his anger. He would never admit it, but humility was creeping in. It arrived slowly, almost invisibly, like dawn expanding behind a dark sky. Still, Gabriel clung to the belief that the inheritance was his final reward. He told himself the work was temporary. But the foundation director saw through him. She approached him one morning and said, "Your grandfather did not send you here to complete chores. He sent you here to understand yourself." Gabriel rolled his eyes, but her words unsettled him. That afternoon she gave him a new assignment. Visit the archives. Study your grandfather's records. Learn his story. At first he resisted, but again he remembered the inheritance and reluctantly agreed. Inside the dusty archive room, Gabriel found photographs of my father as a young man smiling beside children at the foundation. He found letters my father had written describing how poverty had shaped him and how acts of kindness had sustained him. He found documents detailing the years my father had struggled financially while still donating portions of his income to keep the foundation alive. Gabriel stared at each page in disbelief. He realized he had never understood him. He realized he had never bothered to ask. One folder in particular caught his attention. It was marked with his name. He opened it slowly. Inside were letters written by my father to him but never sent. Letters written during Gabriel's childhood. Letters filled with instructions, love, and warnings about pride. One line struck him deeply. "My grandson must learn that wealth without purpose becomes poison. My grandson must learn to value hearts, not possessions." Gabriel felt something inside him crack. He stayed in that room for hours, reading each letter, slowly absorbing the man he had ignored in life. When he returned home that night, he did not brag about the inheritance. He did not laugh about the 10 Reais left to me. He simply went to his room quietly and closed the door. Days passed, and gradually his attitude began to shift. He started greeting residents by name. He began sitting with Senor Elias, listening to stories he once dismissed. He helped Dona Clarice without being asked. The arrogance softened, though not entirely. Pride does not disappear overnight. But he was changing. And change was exactly what my father had hoped for. One afternoon, while Gabriel helped repair a broken railing, a resident approached him holding a folded paper. She recognized Gabriel as Augusto's grandson and smiled gently. "Your grandfather left something here for you." Gabriel frowned. Another letter. Perhaps another lesson. But when he unfolded the paper, his blood ran cold. It was a copy of my father's will. Not the version the lawyer had read. A different version. Sealed version. Private version. And this version said something very different about the inheritance. Gabriel's hands began to tremble. He read the lines again and again as if hoping the meaning would change. The foundation director watched him carefully. She had known this moment would come. Gabriel finally whispered, "This cannot be real." But it was. And it would change everything. Gabriel sat frozen at the desk long after Dona Clarice left him alone with the envelope. The room around him felt smaller than before, as if the walls themselves were leaning in to force him to confront the truth he had spent his entire life avoiding. His breath came unevenly. His hands trembled uncontrollably. He kept reading the same paragraph again and again, hoping the words would somehow rearrange into something safer, something he could accept without tearing apart everything he believed about himself. But each time his eyes reached the final line, the same sharp truth cut into him. The inheritance was not his. Not automatically. Not by entitlement. Not by the assumptions he had carried like a crown since childhood. According to the sealed document, the version my father had stored privately and intentionally away from lawyers and family members, the fortune would go to me, not him, unless he met certain conditions. The public will had been real but incomplete. It was a test, a mirror, a lesson. The sealed document, however, was the truth. Written in my father's own hand, it explained everything he feared would happen if Gabriel grew up chasing money without conscience. And Gabriel knew, reading those words, that his grandfather had been right to worry. He folded the letter slowly, his heartbeat pounding against his ribs like an alarm. He left the archive room without speaking to anyone and walked through the foundation halls in a daze. Elderly residents greeted him, but he barely noticed. His mind replayed memories he thought he had forgotten. His grandfather teaching him how to ride a bicycle. His grandfather giving him small chores and insisting on honesty even when no one was watching. His grandfather warning him gently that character mattered more than achievement. And then the memory he had ignored for years, the day he stopped visiting the old man because someone at school mocked him for spending time in a poor neighborhood. Gabriel had chosen pride over love long before he understood the cost. He walked outside and sat heavily on a bench under a jacaranda tree, watching purple blossoms fall around him. The sealed will lay on his lap. The sun cast shifting shadows, and for the first time in years he felt genuinely lost. Not angry, not triumphant, not superior. Lost. The version of himself he had built so carefully over time felt flimsy now, like paper caught in a storm. The foundation residents passed by in slow, gentle rhythm, their canes tapping softly against the pavement. Gabriel had never noticed those details before. He had been too consumed by himself. After almost an hour, he stood abruptly and walked back inside. Determination hardened his steps. He found Dona Clarice in her office sorting through paperwork. She looked up and studied him with the quiet wisdom of someone who had watched many broken people try to put themselves back together. Gabriel held out the sealed will. "What is this? Why was this hidden?" She closed the folder she was holding and gestured for him to sit. "Your grandfather left 2 versions of his will," she said. "One for the world to see and one for the world to understand. The public version challenged you. The private version explained him." Gabriel leaned forward. "Then why did the lawyer not show this?" She shook her head. "Because this one was not meant for lawyers. It was meant for you. Only you." Gabriel stared at her, confused. "If this is the real will, then why did he not give me the inheritance directly? Why did he leave 10 Reais for my mother? Why make everything so complicated?" Dona Clarice's eyes softened. "Because he wanted you to look inward. Money is a mirror. Shows people who they really are. He wanted you to see yourself before seeing the fortune." Gabriel rubbed his forehead, fighting rising frustration. And what do I do now? Clarice handed the sealed will back to him. You finish what you started. You complete the work. You learn. And when you feel ready, you talk to your mother. She knows the truth. Your grandfather knew the truth, and now it is your turn. That night Gabriel arrived home exhausted but unable to sleep. His room felt suffocating. The silence pressed heavy on his chest. He stared at the ceiling, thinking about the years he had spent mocking me, avoiding me, dismissing me. He remembered the day he shouted that I would never understand his ambitions. He remembered ignoring my phone calls during his worst moments and blaming me for every frustration he faced. He remembered telling relatives that I was dramatic, incompetent, and unworthy of respect. And most shameful of all, he remembered laughing at the 10 Reais inheritance, certain it was proof that he was the favored one. Now he realized it had been a warning, a message, a mirror. Just after midnight he opened the sealed will again. A passage he had skimmed earlier suddenly stood out with painful clarity. My grandson must learn that a legacy is not measured by wealth, but by the heart that carries it. If he mocks his mother, he mocks his own future. If he values money more than honor, he will destroy everything he touches. Gabriel inhaled sharply and covered his face with his hands. He felt a sting in his chest. Regret. Real regret. The kind that does not fade quickly. The next morning at the foundation he worked differently. He moved with quiet focus. He listened more than he spoke. He apologized to residents he had previously ignored. He sat with Senor Elias for over an hour as the old man shared stories of hardship and survival. Something in those stories broke down the last barrier of arrogance Gabriel carried. For the first time he understood that suffering does not make people weak. It makes them profound. It reveals truths that privilege can never teach. As days passed, Gabriel grew stronger, but not in the way he expected. Not in wealth or prestige, but in humility. He felt pride unravel each time he completed a task without complaining. He felt compassion rise each time he met someone who had survived more than he ever would. And with every minute he spent at the foundation, the sealed will weighed heavier in his pocket. The truth inside it was no longer frightening. It was righteous. One afternoon he found himself standing outside my house, unable to gather the courage to knock. He had not spoken to me since the day of the reading. Shame clouded his voice whenever he rehearsed what he might say. He stayed there for 20 minutes staring at the door before turning away. Not yet. He was not ready. He needed to finish the month first. He needed to complete the journey his grandfather had designed. But fate did not wait. The next day, an unexpected visitor arrived at the foundation. A man in a dark suit holding a briefcase. He asked for Gabriel by full name. He said he represented a firm connected to my father's earlier business dealings. Gabriel approached with caution, wondering what new complication might emerge. The man opened his briefcase and pulled out another envelope. This one addressed to both Gabriel and me. Gabriel hesitated, afraid to touch it. The messenger nodded politely and left without explanation. Gabriel opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a final letter from my father. And its contents would unravel everything Gabriel thought he understood about the inheritance, the test, the sealed will, and the legacy he believed was waiting for him. The truth was larger than money. Larger than pride. Larger than the weight he had carried for years. He finally understood. His grandfather had not been dividing wealth. He had been dividing truth. And Gabriel was only now beginning to see the cost. Gabriel stared at the envelope for a long moment before unfolding the letter inside. His hands trembled slightly, partly from fear and partly from the weight of everything that had already happened. The paper felt old yet carefully preserved, as if my father had known this message would take years to reach the right moment. The handwriting was unmistakable, strong, deliberate, and filled with the same sincerity that shaped every part of his life. Gabriel adjusted his stance, leaned against the nearest table, and began to read. My dear grandson, if this letter has reached you, then the first stage of your journey is complete. You have seen the foundation. You have met the people who shaped my childhood. You have worked among them and felt life without titles or comfort. Now you must understand the truth behind the choices I made. Gabriel inhaled slowly. He felt the weight of each sentence settle deeply in his chest. He continued reading. You must not think the inheritance was ever meant to punish you. I worried for you. I saw how the world shaped you into believing that your worth came from status, appearances, and influence. I feared that one day you would lose yourself entirely. So I created a test. Not to shame you but to save you. The sealed will is real but incomplete. There is another document, one that your mother knows about but never shared. I asked her to keep it hidden because the truth inside it could only be revealed when you were ready. Gabriel froze. Another document. Another hidden truth. He had not expected this. His heart began to race. The letter continued. It concerns the source of my fortune. What you have been told is only part of the story. I built businesses, worked tirelessly, and made sacrifices. But there were also mistakes. Powerful men influenced me, men who did not believe in compassion, honor, or justice. They believed in profit no matter the cost. Eventually I broke away from them, but that decision carried consequences you never saw. They threatened me. They threatened my family. They controlled more than you can imagine. I remained silent to protect those I loved. Gabriel's breath caught. A knot formed in his stomach. He whispered softly, "What did you get yourself into, grandfather?" But the letter revealed more. The fortune you believe belongs to you was not created without conflict. There were deals I regretted, partnerships I abandoned, and truths I concealed out of fear. I wanted to leave behind a legacy that would cleanse the mistakes of my past. That is why the foundation mattered. It is why your mother mattered. She carried the truth with grace so you could live without fear. Gabriel lowered the letter for a moment, overwhelmed. He remembered all the years he had accused me of hiding things from him. All the years he believed I was the reason for his frustrations. But now he saw clearly. I had been carrying secrets to protect him, not to deceive him. He resumed reading. You must speak with your mother. She knows more than anyone else. She was my strength during my darkest moments. She stood by me when silence was the only safe choice. She protected you from truths that would have broken you. And she endured your distance with more love than you can imagine. Gabriel shut his eyes tightly as guilt washed over him. He pictured the day he pushed me away at the inheritance reading. The way he mocked me without hesitation. The way he believed I was unworthy. He reopened the letter, slowly, afraid of the next revelation. Before you choose what to do with the inheritance, you must understand this. The foundation is not merely a charity. It is where I hid the last pieces of evidence against the men who once controlled me. I could not expose them while I was alive. But you may face them one day, and you must be ready. The legacy I leave you is not money. It is truth. And truth is heavier than gold. Gabriel felt his chest tighten. He looked around the foundation halls as if expecting shadows to move. The letter continued. You will soon receive visits, inquiries, and perhaps even warnings. Do not trust any unfamiliar lawyers or advisors who claim to know my intentions. Trust only your mother. She protected you once, and she is the only person who can guide you now. As the last words came into view, Gabriel's heartbeat quickened. If anyone comes asking about the documents or the sealed, will send them away. And if a man named Renato appears, you must leave immediately. He was the one who threatened me. He is dangerous. Do not speak to him, and do not let your mother face him alone. Gabriel felt the blood drain from his face. He whispered the name again. Renato. Something about the name felt familiar and unsettling. He read the last line of the letter. If this reaches you, then the past is no longer asleep. Prepare yourself. My mistakes are now your responsibility. The letter ended there. Gabriel folded it slowly, his hands still trembling. His breathing uneven. Everything inside him felt chaotic. The inheritance. The sealed will. The month of work. The secrecy. His grandfather's warnings. The man named Renato. It all connected in a way he had never imagined. He walked through the foundation halls searching for clarity but found only more questions. He saw volunteers moving calmly, residents resting peacefully. Nothing looked dangerous, yet the tension inside him continued rising. He thought about the stranger who had delivered the letter earlier that morning. A man in a dark suit. A man who knew exactly where to find him. A man who left too quickly. A man whose presence now seemed far from innocent. Gabriel hurried outside, scanning the street. But the man was gone. He felt a sudden urge to find me, to demand answers but also to apologize. He reached for his phone and hesitated. What if someone was watching? What if calling me placed me in danger? He remembered the warning. Do not let your mother face him alone. He ran his hand through his hair, pacing anxiously near the entrance gate. He needed to think. He needed to act. He needed to protect me the way he should have long ago. He returned to the bench under the jacaranda tree and sat heavily, trying to steady his thoughts. The purple petals fell around him softly, reminding him of the first day. He arrived at the foundation arrogant and unaware. How much had changed since then? Then the gate creaked open. Gabriel looked up. A man stood at the entrance watching him. A man in a dark suit. The same man who delivered the letter. Only this time he was not smiling. He took a slow step forward and said, "Gabriel, we need to talk." Gabriel stood immediately, his heart pounding. He remembered the name from the letter. Renato. And for the first time in his life, Gabriel felt true fear. When Gabriel heard the name echo inside his mind, everything around him seemed to sharpen. The wind, the distant voices, the rustle of jacaranda petals dropping from the branches, above all of it felt louder, clearer, unnaturally intense. The man in the dark suit walked slowly into the courtyard, as if he already believed he had the right to be there. His expression was calm but not friendly. His steps were silent but purposeful. Gabriel took one step back, instinctively unable to disguise the fear rising inside him. The letter from his grandfather had made one thing clear. This man represented everything Augusto had fought to escape. Renato stopped a few feet away and tilted his head slightly, studying Gabriel with unsettling focus. "You have your grandfather's eyes," he said. The tone was soft but carried a cold undercurrent. Gabriel tried to steady his breath. "What do you want?" Renato smiled, as if amused by the question. "To talk," he answered. "To understand a few things. To recover what belongs to me." Gabriel frowned. "I do not know what you mean." Renato stepped closer. "Your grandfather kept documents. Important ones. Dangerous ones. He hid them but not well enough. And now I believe you have something that belongs to me." Gabriel forced himself not to look at his pocket, where the sealed will and the new letter still rested. Renato noticed anyway. His eyes followed the movement of Gabriel's hand, even though Gabriel had not touched anything. A slow, knowing smile spread across Renato's face. "You do have something," he murmured. "Something your grandfather died protecting." Gabriel felt panic rise in his chest but fought to maintain control. "My grandfather did not leave anything for you." Renato chuckled quietly. "That is where you are wrong. Your grandfather and I had business. Unfinished business. And now that he is gone, it falls on you." Gabriel straightened. "I owe you nothing." Renato raised an eyebrow. "You owe me everything," he whispered. The atmosphere darkened. Gabriel scanned the courtyard, hoping to see a volunteer or resident nearby, but the area was unusually empty. Renato took another step forward. "Your grandfather made mistakes," he said. "But he was smart enough to keep records. Records I need. Records I will get. Whether you cooperate or not." Gabriel's pulse pounded. He remembered his grandfather's warning clearly. "If Renato appears, leave immediately. Do not speak to him. Do not let your mother face him alone." Gabriel swallowed hard. "I am not giving you anything." Renato's smile vanished. His voice dropped to a chilling whisper. "Then your mother will." Those words hit Gabriel like a blow to the chest. He stepped forward angrily. "Leave her out of this." Renato did not move back. "Why should I? She knows more than you think. She kept your grandfather's secrets for years. And secrets have consequences." Gabriel clenched his fists. Do not touch her. Renato leaned closer. Then give me what I want. For a moment Gabriel considered lying, claiming he had nothing. But Renato's eyes were sharp, calculating, impossible to fool. So instead Gabriel did the only thing he could. He turned and ran. He sprinted through the courtyard, through the hallway, past volunteers who shouted in surprise as he rushed by. He did not stop to explain. He did not slow down. He ran because he knew one thing. You must not let Renato reach your mother. He reached the exit gate and pushed it open with all the strength he had. Behind him he heard footsteps. Come, heavy-paced. Renato was not running. He did not need to. He knew exactly where Gabriel was going. Gabriel reached the street breathless and flagged down the first taxi he saw. Please, he gasped. Take me to this address. It was my house. The driver nodded and pulled into traffic. Gabriel looked out the window, his mind spinning with fear, emotion, and urgent questions. What was in those documents? Why did his grandfather fear this man so deeply? And why had his mother been left to carry this alone? The taxi sped through the city, weaving between cars as Gabriel pressed the sealed will and the letter against his chest. The words repeated in his mind like an echo he could not silence. Trust your mother. Protect her. Do not let Renato near her. When the taxi reached the house, Gabriel threw money onto the front seat without counting it and ran to the door. He pounded on it. Mom, open the door, it is me. No answer. He knocked again, louder. Mom, please open. Still nothing. Panic rose in his throat. He reached for the handle. The door was unlocked. That alone told him something was wrong. He pushed it open slowly, stepping into the dimly lit living room. The silence felt unnatural, heavy, as if the air itself were holding its breath. Mom, he called. Are you here? His voice echoed through the house without an answer. He stepped deeper inside, scanning every corner. His heart hammered violently. His hands shook. Every shadow looked like danger. Then he saw a light on in the kitchen. He moved toward it cautiously. Please tell me you are here. He turned the corner. And there I was, sitting at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cup of untouched tea, staring straight ahead with an expression Gabriel had never seen on my face. A mix of fear, sorrow, and acceptance. A look that said I knew something he did not. A look that said I had been waiting for this moment for years. Gabriel rushed toward me. Mom, are you all right? What happened? Why did you not answer? I lifted my eyes, slowly meeting his gaze. He froze when he saw the tears on my face. I whispered his name. And then I said the words I had kept buried for decades. He found us. Gabriel felt the world tilt. What do you mean? Who found us? Closed my eyes. The man your grandfather feared. The man he warned us about. The man who destroyed our peace long before you were old enough to understand. Gabriel's chest tightened. Renato. I nodded slowly. He was here. He came looking for the documents. Gabriel stepped back, breathless. What did you tell him? I shook my head. Nothing. But he will not stop. He believes your grandfather left something behind that can ruin everything he built. Gabriel sank into the chair across from me. The fear he carried transformed into something sharper, stronger, more protective. I am not letting him come near you again. We need to go to the police. But I shook my head firmly. No, Gabriel. These men are not afraid of the police. They own pieces of it. Gabriel felt a chill crawl across his skin. Then what do we do? I reached for his hand. Your grandfather left instructions. But he left something else too. Something only you can decide whether to reveal. From beneath the table I slid a small wooden box toward him. The same box his grandfather had guarded for years. The box Renato had spent decades searching for. Gabriel stared at it in shock. Mom, what is this? I exhaled slowly. The real inheritance.